The number most financial advisors give you for early retirement is wrong. Not slightly wrong, wrong by hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes over $1 million. I know because I ran the math myself, and when I did, I realized the number I've been chasing for years wasn't the number I actually needed. It was the number the financial industry needed me to believe. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to calculate your early retirement number. The one that's actually tied to your life, not a formula someone invented in 1994. Here's what most people do. They Google, how much do I need to retire? They get 4% rule. They multiply their annual spending by 25, and they get a number, let's say 2.5 million. And then they spend the next decade of their life optimizing for that number without ever asking whether it's right for them. The problem is the 4% rule was designed for a 30-year retirement. If you retire at 65 and live to 95, that's your window. But you're not retiring at 65. You're retiring at 50. That's a 40 to 45-year retirement. And when you stretch the math that far, the 4% rule starts to crack. There's also the healthcare gap. If you leave your W-2 job before 65, you lose your employer health insurance. Medicare doesn't start until 65. That gap, 15 years of private insurance, can cost you $800,000 to $1.2 million in today's dollars, depending on where you live and your family situation. Nobody puts that in the calculator. And then there's a sequence of return problems. If the market drops 30% in your first 2 years of retirement and you're pulling money out at the same time, you can permanently damage a portfolio that would have just survived fine if the crash happened in year 10 instead of in year 1. So the number you've been chasing might be too low or it might be too high. Either way, you're probably solving for the wrong thing. I spent the last several years inside the energy and technology sector managing multi-million-dollar revenue operations and obsessively modeling my own financial independence timeline. I'm not a financial advisor. What I am is someone who's done the math on their own retirement and made every mistake worth making before getting it right. This channel is what I wish I had existed when I started. The 4% rule comes from a 1994 study called the Trinity Study. Researchers looked at historical market returns and figured out the maximum percentage you can withdraw annually without running out of money over a 30-year period. The answer was 4%, meaning if you had 2.5 million, you can pull $100,000 per year, and based on historical data, you would survive almost any market sequence over 30 years. Great. Here's the problem for you. The study was built on 30 years, not 40, not 45. When researchers have rerun the math for longer retirements, the safe withdrawal rate drops. For a 40-year retirement, most updated models suggest 3.5% or even 3.25% is safer. That means your 2.5 million target just became 2.85 million, or closer to 3 million if you want real margin. That's a gap of $500,000 that doesn't show up in most retirement calculators. And the Trinity study assumed a simple 60-40 stock bond portfolio with consistent annual withdrawals. Your life is not going to look like that. Here's the framework I actually used. Instead of one retirement number, you need 3. Number 1, your floor. This is the bare minimum your life costs. Housing, food, transportation, utilities, basic healthcare. No vacations, no extra. For most households in a mid-cost city, this is somewhere between $48K to $65K plus. This is the number that tells you when you could technically stop working even if you'd be living really lean. Number 2, your real number. This is what your life actually costs when you're living the way you want to live. Travel, experiences, kids, activities, home maintenance, etc. The thing that makes retirement feel like retirement and not just unemployment. For high income earners, this number tends to land between 90K and 130K plus per year. That's your actual target. Number 3, your cushion number. This is your real number plus 20% buffer for healthcare inflation, sequence risk, and the thing you cannot predict. If your real number is 110,000, your cushion number is 132,000. That's the number you build your portfolio target around. Now multiply your cushion number by 28 instead of 25. That accounts for a longer retirement runway and a slightly more conservative withdrawal rate. At $132,000 times 28, your target portfolio becomes $3.7 million. That might be higher than what you've been told, but it's more likely to actually work. This is the one that catches people off guard more than anything else. When you leave your W-2 job, your employer-sponsored healthcare insurance ends also. COBRA lets you stay on your employer plan temporarily, but you're now paying the full premium, both your shares and what your employer was covering. That's typically $800 to $1,500 per month for a family just for COBRA, and it only lasts 18 months. After that, you're on the ACA marketplace. Depending on your income in retirement and your state, you could pay anywhere from $600 to $2,000 per month for a family plan. Over 15 years until Medicare kicks in, you're looking at $108,000 on the low and maybe up to $360,000 on the high. Here's the thing almost nobody talks about. Your retirement income actually affects your ACA premiums. If you structure your withdrawals correctly, keeping your modified adjusted gross income in a specific range, you can qualify for a significant ACA subsidy that dramatically cuts your monthly premium. This is one of the most important tax planning moves in early retirement, and it requires planning years before you actually leave your job. Imagine two people, both retire with $3 million, both withdrawals $100,000 per year. The market returns the same average over 20 years. Person A retires at 2007, just before a 50% market crash. Person B retires in 2010 after the recovery. Person A runs out of money. Person B is fine. Same portfolio, same withdrawal rate, same average returns, different sequence. This is a sequence of return risk, and it's the biggest threat to early retirement that nobody prepares you for. The solution isn't to work longer, it's to build a cash buffer, typically a 1 to 2 year of living expense in a cash or short-term bond, so that when a crash happens in year 1 or 2, you're pulling from cash instead of selling equity at a loss. Make sense? You let the portfolio recover while you live on the buffer. It's a simple strategy, but it needs to be funded and in a place before you retire, not after you retire. Here's the quick version of the framework. Step 1, calculate your real annual spending, not what you spend now, but what you want to spend in retirement. Step 2, add a 20% cushion for healthcare inflation and sequence risk. Step 3, multiply by 28. Step 4, add a 2-year cash buffer on top of that portfolio. Step 5, add a realistic estimate for healthcare costs from retirement to age 65. That's the final number, is actually your retirement number. For most high-income W-2 earners aiming to retire at 50, it lands you somewhere between $3.2 million and $4.5 million, depending on the lifestyle and location. That's probably not what you've been told, but it's the number that actually works. At the start of this video, I told you most people are solving for the wrong number. Now you know why. The 4% rule isn't built for 45-year retirement. The healthcare gap is real and is expensive, and the sequence of your returns matter as much as the size of your portfolio. Here's the good news. None of this is complicated once you see it clearly. It's math. Math has answers. In the next video, I'm going to show you the exact account structure, 401k, Roth, brokerage, cash that lets you retire at 50 without paying a 10% early withdrawal penalty on the money you actually need to live on. If that's useful to you, subscribe, please. That's what the channel is. This channel is for information and educational purposes only. Nothing here is financial advice. Always consult with a qualified financial professional before making any investments on a retirement decision.